glittery gray, sleek, shiny 2003 Buick Century that my friends and I lovingly nicknamed George. It wasn't the most efficient car, and it definitely was not the easiest to park, but George was a tank if there ever was one. I put over 20,000 miles on that car in the 2.5 years we had together, before a patch of Michigan black ice on the interstate took us both out and left him and my heart shattered. Being 20 miles away from my undergraduate college, I immediately had to purchase a new car after the accident to make it through the remaining year of school. While I was thankful I had a vehicle, I hated that car. It brought all my complaints of driving straight to the forefront, being previously shielded by my undying devotion to my beloved George. I hated the maintenance cost. I hated gas prices and the resulting pollution. I hated the isolation of driving and the distinct sense of ennui that it left me. It was those wasted moments sitting in traffic all by my lonesome from which my passion for transportation planning grew. America has created a structure, both in a physical and policy sense, that promotes a single-occupied vehicle as the main means of transportation. The continued proliferation of the automobile affects the entire general public, whether we drive every day or not. More cars on the road means more pollution in the air, less physical activity, less connections with the urban commons, and less interactions with the urban community. Access to public transportation and multimodal transit options should be a public good, something provided by the state for the benefit of the masses. Unfortunately, due to a competitive market economy combined with constraining government subsidies and budgets, owning and operating a personal vehicle is often the only option left to American commuters. The current situation is dismal and will only get worse unless there is some kind of intervention. Fortunately, I am not alone in searching for multimodal transportation alternatives. There are several facts pointing to both the increased interest in walking, biking, and public transit, and the decreasing usage of automobiles. VMT, or vehicle miles traveled, has been steadily decreasing over the past several years. Millennials especially are far more likely to use public transit, walk, bike, or carpool than their predecessors. They also find it difficult to own a car due to the combined high prices of the vehicle itself, gas, insurance, and maintenance. And as recently as 3 weeks ago, the Surgeon General released a national call to action on increasing walking and walkable communities. Encouragingly, there are already several planning associations and organizations that lobby and research active transportation policies. Smart Growth America, the American Public Transportation Association, and Transportation for America, just to name a few. Though several of these organizations work at the national level, focusing mostly on policy, the work they do often promotes, supports, and inspires local and regional planning design solutions to the transportation problem. However, the government has continued to subsidize oil companies, car companies, and other manufacturing and construction industries tied to increased roads. This was especially true in the most recent recession, with the federal government giving nearly $80 billion to car companies. And yet, it becomes increasingly difficult each year to allocate money towards public transportation or non-automobile modes of travel when creating a federal or state budget. The issue of providing multimodal transportation options is not merely a physical one, it is more so an economic one. Planning theorists of the last few decades have debated whether market failures and external deficiencies justify planner intervention. Terry Moore uses the public goods theory to justify planning intervention in an economic sense. That is, it is logical for planners to put controls and regulations into place to provide a good or service that benefits everyone equally, and is both non-rivalrous and non-exclusive. Harry Richardson and Peter Gordon disagree, saying the amount of goods that fall into this category are actually very narrow, and that the private sector can often provide the same good or service in a more efficient and equitable manner. The issue of funding public transportation, often perceived as a public good, is contentious exactly for the reasons Richardson and Gordon suggest. Cities who cannot find the financing must either contract out to the private sector for services, something that is frequently done for paratransit, or get rid of public transportation altogether. The same can be said for road and sidewalk infrastructure that does not exclusively benefit drivers. As a much higher percentage of commuters drive over biking or walking, it can be exceedingly difficult to get public support and dedicated taxpayer money towards decreasing road width and the number of lanes to accommodate multiple modes of transportation. David Harvey said it best, "Capital has no interest in building cities for people. It only has an interest in building cities for profit. If cities and those who regulate, plan, and fund them continue to strive exclusively for capital growth, the automobile industry will dominate, leading to a continuing decline of multimodal infrastructure and public health. Planners need to do something. However, promoting the provision of multimodal transportation at both the local and national level justifies both increasing and decreasing intervention by planners. Planners need to promote better bike and pedestrian infrastructure as well as public transit in their communities through continued education and dedicated attention to motivating residents to ditch their car. At the same time, planners need to take a more hands-off, or laissez-faire approach to financing and promoting the auto industry. Unless, of course, they're going to start doing the same thing for sidewalks and bike lanes and buses and subways. Planners need to intervene by incentivizing decreased car use at least locally for the general public, both through design and policy work, without necessarily infringing on an individual's right to use a car if they so choose. Cars are not going to completely disappear, nor should they, but it is absolutely critical for our nation's health to encourage walking, biking, and taking the bus. New urbanist, old urbanist, Marxist, progressive, whatever you want to call yourself, just be a planner and start the movement towards multimodal.